Hi, my little earthlings. So, in today's video, we're going to be talking about why you shouldn't fear putting your art out into the world. Okay, so let's start off with what is it about putting art out into the world that scares people? And this applies for any form of creative expression. And so you can apply this to anything: singing, dancing, writing a book, all of that, making a movie, acting. Well, in my opinion, the reasons why putting our creativity or our art out there in the world scares people is because, one, it can be very personal. So if it's a story that's close to you, or you think it's like a well thought out idea and then it doesn't end up looking that way to others, the first thing we learn by putting our creativity out there is that not everyone's going to agree with us. And we're going to have, this is the internet, so we're going to have people out there who are going to tell us that they don't agree with the premise of what we're doing or things like that, or they don't like it. Luckily, for the most part, because webcomics are a pretty tame genre of entertainment, and because it is entertainment, things don't get very controversial or harsh fast unless you specifically are writing an allegory or a comic in which you want to commentate on something, like a political comic. In that case, yes, you might be opening yourself up to a far more large and scary crowd of people than the one you would typically get when you're just trying to entertain people with a story. So yes, it can be very personal, so it can be scary to put something personal out there. The second thing is, the first time that you do anything, it's gonna just be bad. It's gonna kind of suck a little bit. And maybe when you do it, you might not know it. I'm one of those people that grew up just kind of putting my art out there. And so, like, while I don't really have as much of an insecurity or fear about putting my art out there, I know that putting my music out there has been a lot harder of a journey. The first time I did a show where I actually debuted singing some of my songs live, I got very shaky and nervous, and my hands went numb, and I messed up a little bit. Luckily, no one could tell I messed up because the songs were originals, but I knew I could do better, and I didn't, because I just didn't have a lot of practice performing live in front of people. And it was hard, and it was very scary. I would say that my experiences with performing live music has been far more scary than posting my art out there. But then again, I've been posting my art online since I was at least 13, and I've been sharing my art with my art class or my family since I was way younger, probably since I was 5. And the funny thing is like, at the time I thought I was awesome, but I can look back later and see how sucky it is. And I think that the fear that you might look back later and that it would suck might be there, and you kind of just learn to roll with it and kind of just say, you live in the moment sort of deal, and you can't predict in the future if you might look back and think that something you did was good or bad. Some of my old projects I still think have a lot of potential, or some of them I think are really cool, even years down the road. So, a personal example of a first time doing anything that sucks is, I have a webcomic called Prima that I believe I've mentioned previously in another video, and it is my first webcomic I ever did. I was 15. The comic is very unstructured. Literally, the panels start disappearing. There's like about 40 or 50 pages of the comic, and about 2/3 of the way through, I just stopped drawing panels altogether. So it looks really bad. The descriptions are really weird and brief and kind of funny. And I'm probably actually going to do a video where I react to my old webcomic, because I haven't read it in a long time. But I did find it recently, and I was just like, oh, cringe alert. But like, good kind of cringe. Like, I've learned to like kind of find it endearing, and like I love it. I love looking at my old bad work because it shows that I've grown. So that's sort of the benefit of seeing that something you did at one point might have sucked. And it's nice that, you know, even though it sucked, I just continued on because I got better. If I had stopped when I felt insecure about it, worrying that it would suck, I wouldn't be where I am now. So another reason why it might scare people is because if they're going to put their art out there and it's not perfect, or like it's not how they envisioned in their head, they might just decide that it's not even worth it until they get it exactly how they see it in their head. And that's a very hard thing to do. I can say that I still don't completely execute making art the way I see it in my head, but it's sort of like, the best we can do, because we're only human, is to try to get close. Because, like Elizabeth Gilbert says that she believes our creativity is given to us by a daemon. So it's sort of like God working through us. And I don't mean like religious God, but it's more like a spiritual thing where our creativity is given to us by something else. It's not just something that is from us directly. It's something more or less channeled through us. And I find that interesting because I have often gotten some very beautiful or just profoundly just wonderful things that I've visualized, that I've wanted to draw or digitally paint or physically paint. And all I could do is work my hardest to make what I see in my head come out on a piece of paper. And even if I don't know where that thought or that inspiration comes from, you know what I mean? So and that's all you really can do. And luckily, because it's a skill that people can improve upon, it's something that with time you will get closer and closer to what you envision in your head. Or maybe it'll come out even better than how you envisioned it. So why do people fear putting their art out in the world? So I think that people really fear it because they have insecurities, and perhaps they grew up with a lack of proper support from loved ones. Perhaps they got ridiculed, or they got ignored or neglected. Maybe they got bullied. Maybe someone was jealous in their family and then told them that what they did was bad when it actually was great. And so it can form insecurities about what a person's really capable of. And, it all ties in with self-doubt as well. So, and then lastly, of course, is perfectionism. And perfectionism really is something that, because art is subjective, is something that should not be tied to it. If people want to be perfect in things that are definitive, that's fine. But art's not really definitive. It's been said before that an art piece is never really finished until the artist decides a stopping point. But even then, it doesn't mean it's done. There's always more that could be done because it is subjective. So that's why some people fear it. For those of you who don't fear it and you don't understand why, it's just not everyone has the same background. Not everyone has the same environment growing up, same experiences. I know that my view of posting my art was very different than how my siblings felt about posting their art. So and we had a somewhat similar childhood, but there was still enough minute differences that our mindset was different growing up. So how can someone get over their fear of posting their art out in the world? Well, I guess a part of it has to do with acceptance of the fact that you're probably just gonna suck the first few times. But I can also tell you that the internet is pretty kind about posting your art. I would say I have rarely ever gotten negative or nasty comments, and I've been posting my art to the internet for 13 years. I've been posting on all kinds of platforms like DeviantArt and The Duck, which used to be called Drunk Duck Comics. I post my art on Instagram, and I've never really gotten really negative responses. So that's something I can kind of tell you that you can look forward to, is you probably won't get a slew of negativity. If you do fear that the context of your art is a little strange and that it might garner some weird attention, I mean, hey, if it's strange enough, if it's polarizing enough, it might get turned into a meme. So that's a good thing. Your art could go viral. That is the great thing about art, is if your art is either extremely, extremely good or extremely, extremely bad, it'll still get popular on the internet. It's more dangerous if your art is just boring. Like if you're kind of in this in between, then you it won't really go viral. But your art going viral might not be what you want anyway. It's not really everyone's cup of tea, because then it kind of spins out of control. It kind of takes on a life of its own. So some ways that I kind of get over my fear of doing anything creative, even if I don't really relate in terms of art, But I do relate in terms of getting fears of like when I practice acting or when I practice singing or when I do sing in front of people or when I act in front of people. It's just doing it. It's just a matter of telling myself to do it. And that, and to not expect too much of myself in terms of like, if I know I'm new at something and I'm going to be sharing it with others, it means a lot to me to basically just give it my best and then ask people their feedback on how I could do better and kind of just really keep an open mind to it, because you can get a lot of really good, valuable insight. And if you feel too insecure to want to get any valuable insight when you're just starting out, it's okay. You don't have to ask for criticism, whether, you don't have to ask for constructive criticism at all. You can choose to grow at your own pace. Basically, choosing to ask for advice is your choice. Like it's all about you and your choice. And if anyone ever tries to give you unwarranted criticism or unwarranted advice when you're doing something new and you feel insecure about it, and it might make you lash out, and just understand it's coming from that place of like making sure you express to others that your boundaries are that you would like at this time to not accept advice or criticism. As long as you voice it, that you do or don't, then people kind of will know where you stand. So it's important to kind of make sure they know that, because people just, they mean well. People want to see you improve or get better, so they might show that or express that by giving unwarranted advice or criticism, but without telling them that's not what I need right now, they might not know that they're pushing your insecurity button or something. So I know that I've had this happen with me. Like I would sit there, and when I was drawing Fergus early on, I was having a lot of trouble making sure he looked the way I wanted him to look. He's one of the main characters in my story. I wanted him to have an air of confidence about him, and I wanted him to look like an alien, but I also kind of wanted him to look a little bit sexy, like a sexy alien, So, and I'm not very good at drawing guys, so I had some insecurities around my skills as an artist when it came to drawing guys. And I also had some insecurities around making a appealing, attractive male character, one that embodied masculinity, but also was alien to an extent. Like it's all very new to me. So I had some insecurities around it. And I know I showed a piece that I had drawn to a friend of mine. And like he was just like, he knows me really well. So he was just like made some kind of offhand comment where he kind of like joked about it. He was like, oh, he made some kind of inappropriate comment basically about what he thought was happening in the picture. And it was just like, Fergus was just sitting at a desk, but I don't know what he was seeing that I totally didn't see, but it just took me aback. Like when he kind of was like, his first impression was something that was not what I intended for the picture, and it upset me. And it wasn't that it upset me because he shouldn't have been joking. It upset me because I had insecurities about where I was at in terms of skills with doing something new, and I didn't express to him ahead of time, hey, I'm new at this, be kind. Like I'm not looking for advice, or like don't joke around. I know we normally joke, but this time I want you to like give me your serious opinion, or just take a look at it, and don't be all goofy about it, and so kind of recognizing that you're trying something new, and then if you're worried you're going to feel insecure about it, just telling people ahead of time so you can recognize if it's going to bother you or not. And it's not always easy to recognize it, and you might recognize it afterwards, after you might tell your friend like, no, that's not what's happening, or that's not what they're doing, or or if they're like, oh, is that a girl? And you're like, no, it's a guy character. It could clue you in that maybe your character needs to look more masculine if that's what you want. But it also, I can understand it stinging. It's normal if it stings and you're just like, no, I worked so hard, and they still think that the character looks too feminine or something, So it happens to everyone. But yeah, just put it out there. And make sure you just express your needs and your boundaries on what you don't need at the time when you're putting your art out there. And just be aware that, you're going to be your own critic. And even if it takes years to be that critic, to see it, and even then, hopefully you'll be a constructive critic to yourself and not a mean one. I usually just laugh about my old stuff that looks bad. I always find it to be pretty wonderful. Okay, so the benefits of not fearing putting your creativity out there. So there was a point in my life in which I was considering not doing anything creative ever again because it seemed like my creativity only ever kind of dug me a hole, or it put me in a bad place, or it did bad things for me. Like, it never really got me enough. It never was something I could live financially off of. I could never make enough money with my art in order to feel comfortable. And so part of me was just so done with it. It was so sick of all the backlash I received from pursuing creativity. And I pursued it very heavily. I gave it my all, and I would work more than my fair share of overtime hours on creative projects. And that bitterness that came from deciding that I just wanted to give up on putting my art out there or putting my creativity out there, it really came from a place of burnout, and it did make me fear putting my stuff out there. It did, because, it's like when you're already burned out and you get just even the slightest bit of criticism, it feels like 10 times worse, And for me, it was that I got a bad review on Dark Tales of Lolita, and it was at a time in which I had kind of burned myself out on trying to get the book released by Halloween, and it made me fear wanting to put another comic out there or anything like that. Or, and same thing with like just fearing that I won't make money off of it. But when I kind of learned to flip my mindset about that and not fear like what is my creativity going to give me, but more like how can I just find the most basic enjoyment in it so I, don't get burned out or don't hate it. I feel like that was the better way to go about it, E.T. Girl has an 8.67 on Webtoons. Do I wish it was a 9 or a 10? Yes. I think it's a little unrealistic for it to ever be a straight up 10 because nothing is perfect. But I would like to get it up to a 9, and I have watched it go from an 8.14 up to an 8.67. And I just take that as a good sign to see that my work is paying off. I can recognize where the flaws are that people might give it a lower rating, but I have also gone through and fixed those things and try to take it as constructive criticism, and at times in which I'm annoyed that my rating is low, I just try to ignore that there's a rating on it at all, because I feel like a lot of the times, like, people don't know what the overall story of E.T. Girl is. They don't know how big it is or how much more I have to tell, and they could be giving it a low rating for various reasons, ones that I don't understand. Some people might rate it low just because they thought it was a color comic and they find out it's black and white. Well, there's nothing I can do about that, It's a black and white comic. That's just the way it is. Some people might rate it low because they thought that it was a boy love comic, and it's not a boy love comic. Some people might rate it low because they see continuity errors in some of the panels with some of the weapons that I drew, or they might not like the fact that some of my chapters are kind of short. All of these things are things that I work on to try to improve, and I know that they're there. And even to me, I don't consider my comic a 10 out of 10, but I strive for a 10 out of 10. You know what I mean? I strive for that. And I also know to not take it too harshly if I'm getting a rating now, because we're just in the beginning of the story, and nothing is going to make me, no amount of whatever my rating is going to make me stop telling the story, because it needs to be told. It has to be seen through to completion for people to really give it an overall rating or judgment. It's sort of like if people were to go into a movie theater and walk out and then give it a rating on IMDb before they even finish watching the movie. It's kind of like that. So I don't really take it too harshly. And I think that anyone who has a webcomic out there, and especially a webcomic that can be rated, like, don't let that make you afraid to continue. You know? Don't let that take that away from you. So yeah, so that's my little spiel on why you shouldn't fear putting your art out there. And I hope that you guys got something from this, and I hope it helps some people. And if you want to check out more of my work, I've got stuff up on my Instagram at ThePlanetsDreamer. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.